Hi, I'm Peter Llewellyn of NetworkPharma TV. This is one of my unscripted conversations, as I call them, where I get to chat with folks, and I think we're going to be able to share some interesting information. But we'll see what happens. We're going to see what we learn today. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about the overall industry landscape, maybe the opportunity for thinking a little bit differently and disrupting current practices. Specifically, I'm interested in hearing about the Pharmageddon events, and I'm pleased to be joined by Paul and Noreen today, who will talk to us about all of that. Can I start, Noreen? Will both of you like to introduce yourself? And I'd like to start, Noreen, with you. Tell us who you are, what you do, and just briefly how you got there.
Yeah, cool. So my name is Noreen Sajwani. I'm the head of consulting at Impatient Health. And my kind of career in pharma sort of started a bit oddly because I studied healthcare management and policy, took a class back in the day that was called The Ethics of Pharma, learned pharma was not a very ethical place to be in America, and thought to myself, I will never end up in the pharmaceutical industry.
Ah,
Then fast forward a few years later, I learned about bioethics within the pharma landscape and kind of figured if you can't beat them, you've got to join them. So I did kind of end up, my first role was at Pfizer, as in the market access division, looking across international developed markets with a background kind of in healthcare reimbursements. Started off my career there, and then I realized learning about just one part of the pharmaceutical landscape was not enough. So I kind of dug a little bit deeper into life sciences strategy. Been doing that for a while, and with Impatient as well. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
excellent, thanks. So over to you, Paul. And just to cue it in, you haven't got the in-depth pharmaceutical industry background, have you? So tell us who you
No,
are, what you do, and where you come from.
no, Peter, you found me out. I am a total
Hmm.
fraud, and there were many reasons why Noreen needed to join me in my team. That is just one of them. But many of the audience will probably have remember Pharma, which was an organization I ran for about 17 years. Never intended to work in events, but ended up building up a great sort of black book, a kind of independent position in the industry, which has been super useful, and also developed a healthy frustration with our industry. I felt like it was same old for far too long. Patients were demanding so much, and as an industry, we were moving so slowly. There was a huge, I always say pharma's greatest disease is complacency, and it felt like things were moving at a glacial rate. My job, I guess, when I decided to push out and create Impatient Health in 2020, was to try and evolve the industry more quickly. And if you think of evolution as a metaphor, which I often do, how does anything evolve more quickly? Well, it mutates, it gets exposed to different environments, it gets all of that habitat pressure that we see in the wild. And with pharma sort of sticking to its sort of safe tunnel vision, almost like kind of lane, it's never going to change its spots. So really, I feel that my job these days is all about exposing and bringing the outside world in to our industry and helping it, see the wood from the trees, helping it see the bigger picture, helping it, uh, you know, light that burning platform that's going to get it to actually, dance and move somewhere else. And that's really my role here now in the industry.
Okay, and many people will know you from the events that you run and so on.
Mm.
You're very connected, but I think it's interesting that there is that sort of outside view, that you bring. Yeah, just to clarify, with Impatient Health, which is your company, you set up the Pharmageddon events, which were designed, as I understand it, to be a place where we could encourage disruptive feelings, thoughts, and practices. You started that a couple of years ago. I think it was October 23. I'm just trying to get my timeline straight.
Very, very good, Peter. It was indeed, and it was. I actually said never again.
Right. Okay.
I left the events world in mid 2020, where events, of course, did not exist. We were all
Yeah.
in lockdown, and I saw it as a fantastic opportunity to sort of close the door on that episode of my life and move on. But when events started to come back in, say, 2022, all the talk in the events was, let's not go back, let's change. This is an opportunity. We don't have
Right.
to live by the same rules. But the events themselves were trying to go back to exactly what they were before, and there was a lot of, should we, shouldn't we, and a lot of, do we have to? If you can remember, a lot of people trying to recreate virtually the event experience and put up sort of
Yeah.
graphics of event booths and things like that. And I just thought, God, it doesn't have to be this way. Now I've created a company that kind of stands for this disruption and evolution and all the rest of it I've just mentioned. And I know a few things about events. It's almost my duty to come back in and try and do something different. So I promised myself I'll only do it if I do it in the complete opposite way from the conventional industry conference.
I suppose, I mean, I don't want this just to turn into a discussion about Pharmageddon, and we all knew that sort of thing. But having said that, I find it interesting I find it interesting to observe someone trying to do something differently, and I'm interested in the thinking behind it a little bit. So just a little bit, just go a little bit further, okay? Because it's easy to say I want to do things different. I meet all sorts of people all the time who go, I don't like the way they're doing it, so I'll do it differently. But often as not, it turns out to be the same. It's just someone's doing it themselves. What do you Can you try and give me a bit more of a sense of what it is you think you're doing differently? And to be frank, how you're measuring it, or how do you prove to yourself that you are achieving anything? Do you see what I'm saying, Paul?
Oh, yeah. And I'll be honest with you, Peter, it has not been straightforward. The first attempt ended up screwing up so badly. I don't think anyone actually knows this. But I ended up postponing the whole thing by 6 months because it was clearly just not going to work.
Right. See, I didn't know
Um,
that, and now it's just
yeah,
between
yeah,
us.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. No one's listening, are
And
they?
anyone else listening?
Uh, but the truth is that, when I set out there, let's do something different, people just, they could see the principles that I was trying to go on, but everyone kept on saying, well, where's the agenda?
Right.
Where are the things you're actually trying to do? All the conventional things that you would associate with an event, where are they? Because there's no way that I can get permission from my boss or, take 3 days of my life out or even justify to my family that I'm going to be away from them. And I don't really know exactly what I'm going to get out of this thing. I don't know what it's there for. And, Impatient Health is basically a company designed for the left-hand side of the adoption curve. If you're familiar with the adoption curve, you've got your early adopters and your innovators on the left-hand side. Even despite that, that focus on that maybe 1 or 2% of people, there just wasn't enough substance for people to go on. And I did have to bring in some industry convention, some event conventions in order to be able to bring it. So there is an agenda, you'll be pleased to know. I've managed to ensure there are no presentations. There's no sort of vendor slots where people are going to sit there getting bored with a sales pitch. There's no exhibition, which I just feel is a room full of awkwardness for everybody.
Right.
The farmer to vendor ratio is about 70-30, which I was, again, really adamant. And then the final thing that really pissed me off about the average event is that most people just sit at the back checking their emails or basically being on holiday. And I get it, you want to be away from your home environment for a bit. But think of the carbon footprint and the brain power that you're just not taking advantage of with all of those smart people in one place. And I just think, what a missed opportunity. So half the event, and this is again where I have to thank Noreen because she's been the architect of a lot of this. But at least half of the event is designed to be hands-on, what we call them solve sessions, where we're trying to actually build something, create something new that's never been created before with this kind of brand new, segment of random strangers in the room that they can all get together and create something that maybe they wouldn't normally get to create in their own four walls. So that's the dream.
And Peter, if I can give you
Okay.
the opposite end of that,
Go on.
because
Yeah.
I was actually there when, Paul had this dream of Pharmageddon before it even had the name Pharmageddon. And I also come from an events background, but different type of events. So I spend kind of my summers, my weekends, doing summer camps and year-long global
Right.
camps. And we have kind of kids between the ages of 6 to 18. And then we do one's festivals through my religious community that are kind of bringing together, almost imagine the Olympics, right? For about 50,000 people around the world that come together between the ages of 2 and 92. So my kind of events background was not from a commercial lens, but much more from a bring together the community, get people excited, be immersive. And so when Paul sort of said, we want to do this thing, in my head, it's like, yep, get out the Legos, get people working on stuff, get
Right,
them,
right.
get their hands dirty with crayons and things. And it really was, as Paul says, almost this like, we both kind of brought in, now that I can reflect on it, Paul, you know, years later, we both came in with our own set of conventions of what an event had to be. And I think together really could kind of come to a middle ground of like, this is what we need to get sign off from a pharma company to be able to come. But equally, we can have fun and play together while we're at this event. And I think that's the sort of hybrid that you see today now.
Yeah.
So I still want to still ask the question: how, when you're setting up something to disrupt, how do you measure whether it is disrupting? And I guess we're a couple of years into it, so you might just go, well, we'll wait and see. But have you any thoughts on that, or can you help me understand a little bit what you're trying to do there?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I'm glad you held us to account on that, because the
Yeah.
truth is that when you run an event, like when I used to run an events company, the end point would be the event. Like, well, hey, everyone,
Exactly. Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
go home, job done. Here, I kind of think of the event as the start point of something that actually matters. And it's really hard to know whether or not you've had an impact. But I am driven, as I said, my entire frustration and reason for being here in the first place is because our industry isn't going as fast as it bloody should. And unless I see that that's actually having an effect post-event, then I feel like I failed, or just wasted everyone's time. And so we're trying. I can't say we've achieved it yet. In this year's event, for example, we're creating accountability pods where people are going to form small groups early in the event and actually hold each other to task and set themselves a series of milestones that they're going to attempt to measure one another against over the following weeks and months post-event. It's a bit tricky because everyone gets something different out of the experience. It's not a
Yeah.
thing where, and that's another reason why it's really hard to sort of say, what's the ROI on your experience here? Well, it's completely different for everyone. So holding people accountable, making sure they stay kind of close to the flame and don't forget. And that's about that's a critical thing. But honestly, I am still on a work in progress on this.
Okay.
And yes, I hear anecdotes and stories, and this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have done this. I hear that, daily, but I don't have anything measurable or concrete, and I'm definitely open to suggestions.
Okay. Okay. Again, it appeals to me because I come from a background where the measure was how many bums on seats, and that was it. And as you say, it's very difficult to go beyond that. But that's what we've got to do, isn't it? Whether it's a medical society meeting or it's a meeting of industry folk like this. So okay. So and is it fair to say you do use the term, don't you? Sort of, it's a movement. It's not just an event. You are trying to give people this sense that you join in with this, and I guess develop as a little bit of a community. I mean, do you want to just say a word on that? I mean, is that genuine, or is that just a bit of marketing flannel, as it were?
Uh, yeah, it's just total marketing flannel pieces. No,
Okay, all right, okay. Because I
honestly,
get
well,
the
I never
sense there
wanted
are
to run events
regulars who
again.
want.
I literally have no interest in running events anymore.
Okay.
Only if that something bigger than an event is generated that I'm even vaguely interested. If I'm
There's got to be real outcomes to this stuff, which is partly what comes out of the events, but it's partly a bigger thing about the community and people doing stuff as a result.
people who are in that kind of early adopter group, they probably feel like weirdos in their everyday life. They're the one person who speaks up, who says why, who is the irritating toddler in a group full of adults and maybe goes against the grain a little bit too often for everybody's comfort's sake. Well, that's a group that probably does need to come together and have its own friends and feel at home once a year at least. And if I can just provide that little comfort zone for when for everyone else's uncomfortable zone, then I feel like that really helps because as you can imagine, that group will bounce off each other massively. They'll be in an environment where they suddenly feel that people say yes instead of no to their sort of off the wall suggestions, and it's how can we as opposed to why can't we? And yeah, Noreen, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that one.
Yeah,
I,
I think
I,
it's
I love that sort of thinking. Sorry, I love that sort of thinking. I will always ask quite how you measure and what we'll all grapple with that, all the rest of it. I love the thinking, but I guess, Noreen, as I understand it, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're quite involved in putting together the program, identifying the issues, the topics, as well as the sort of the practicality. But in the environment that Paul's described, and it's a conservative environment needing some change. How do you go about, just out of interest, the process of identifying those topics and deciding what you're going to include and how you're going to include it? Is it as well? I'm not going to put words in your mouth. You tell us a little bit about the process.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I will say is similar to raising a child, it takes a village, right? So
Okay.
it's definitely like a team effort. We've got this incredible team that works behind the scenes. We've got, a person that is solely in charge of thinking of new and disruptive ideas. We've got someone that is managing the event for kind of each of the ones that we run, both in Europe and the US. They sort of pull together, do research calls on what are people interested in learning more about and what's on their minds for the future. What are the things that they're worried about, the challenges that they're facing. From the consulting side of things, we'll kind of bring our own set of here's what we're actually grappling with clients on now and sort of bring that to the table. And so it does become almost a collective effort of let's share our trauma stories that we're hearing across pharma and pull that together. And that's really the mosaic of the agenda, I would call it. And that allows us to then, as Paul kind of referred to before, not only have these learn sessions where we debate, discuss, and kind of grapple with those ideas on a more theoretical level, but then the solve sessions. And the solve sessions are really that practical application of, great, now what are you going to do about it? So it begins to kind of instill that accountability and that ownership of, yes, it's a theoretical problem, a future scenario that you might be thinking through in that sort of session. But then what are you going to take back? And one of the things that we do at the end of the 2 days is have commitments. And that allows people to at least start to say, I'm going to do this one thing, or I'm going to do these 3 things. Now, it is on them. The onus is on them to work through that. But I think that allows us to begin to create this ripple effect of if one person can touch another, you're paying it forward. And at least that idea spreads, and ideas are contagious at the end of the day.
Okay. Let's get away from the mechanics of the meeting itself, and let's can I just tap into your expertise in terms of looking at the industry, and by definition you're trying to find the topics that excite people and that they can talk about and the challenges and yada yada yada. So let's just turn the conversation around a little bit into well, come on then, share with me what the current challenges are. And let's just pick up on some of the issues. I mean, it can't be as simple as just AI and being more patient centric. There must be but even those 2 big topics. But tell me a little bit about what you're seeing as the need for change, the areas where you see need for change within the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a systems level thinker, right? So a lot of the work that I do and my team does is trying to understand how we can bring different disciplines to disrupt pharma. And a lot of the things that I see that are sort of impacting the pharma world without them even knowing it is this seamless everyday experience of the consumer. Now, that consumer could be a patient, it could be an HCP, it could be a nurse, it could be a caregiver, it could be a payer, whoever. But I think this idea of you're not just going to be disrupted by the Googles and the Apples of the world, but it's really like these wellness lifestyle kind of brands. Lululemon is taking over, right? And you don't even know it as a pharma company because you're not thinking about it. So I think for me, that is the brink of disruption. Some of the other things that, our team works on a lot are areas that are for vulnerable populations. So health, ideas like health equity or cell and gene therapy, what's going on in the rare disease space and how are they shifting as, we get field force that's coming out and more of the digital space. We've ridden the wave of multi-channel to omni-channel. We're now riding the wave from omni-channel to digital. And now we're kind of going into a space where, to your point, Peter, yes, we've got AI, but how are we using that for digital only and sales force effectiveness there? And those are kind of a high level, surface level summary of kind of some of the things that that at least I work on and think about on a day-to-day basis. But Paul, I'm sure you've got weirder and wonderful things to add there.
Well, it's again, I've used the word duty already today. I think it's our duty to ensure that our sources of inspiration are not merely from within. So yes, of course, there's a whole technology angle which you alluded to, and as Noreen said, there is the world's political, geopolitical, and economic environment, which we kind of bury our head in the sand a little bit. If we're honest, it's almost too big. We don't know what to do. What we like to do is rather than sort of worry too much about what's going on today as well. A lot of these solve sessions that we mentioned, a lot of the general way, the theme is trying to come up with an audacious idea as a starting point, a kind of moonshot, if you will, and using that as the basis. Because what I find in our industry is that we beat ourselves with sticks a lot. We are constantly saying we're not good enough at omnichannel or patient centricity or AI or whatever. And we rarely have the carrot. Like, what are we actually trying to get to? What is the destination? What does the vision actually look like? And I think that if you don't have a combination of the two, you're always going to fall short. If you don't have, whether it's a Musk-like, we're going to live on Mars, or it's some other kind, it has to be a specific vision, something tangible that you can actually, and probably surprises you. My definition of audacity is it would probably never come up in a focus group, right? So it has to be something a little bit otherworldly, a little bit uncomfortable. And so much of what I think makes this event tick is trying to determine for yourself what your own audacious goal might be. And how do you do that? Well, you actually have to look within, not just outside. If you're going to be motivated by some kind of moonshot-like ambition, it kind of has to start with you and your ambition, your personal ambition, and understanding your own kind of sense of purpose and why the hell you joined this industry or chose to work at all in the first place. And again, it's much more than just paying a paycheck and, making sure you can eat dinner every day. It's making sure that you feel leave this earth feeling like you've contributed to something and you've got something to tell your grandchildren at the end of the day. So it's tapping into actually the self at the beginning that then is the source of that audacity that I spoke about. That audacity, if you're willing to then speak it, actually creates accountability. If I say I'm going to go on the moon, then suddenly that's interesting and everyone's going to try and hold me to account. You said you were going to get to the moon, Paul. How's that going? And ironically, it's that accountability that then drives the action. So the more audacious, the bigger you're able to think, and the more personally you're able to think from the first step, the more you're actually going to have a chance of hitting the road at the end of the day and actually achieving something of note. So everything that Noreen said is critical. You've got to do that. You can't do it in a vacuum. You have to do it in the outside world and see where all of those things are going. But you also have to look inwardly a little bit. And that's what, I actually didn't know that when I started Pharmageddon. It's actually only in the process of having done, I think we're about to our fifth event now, that I've learned that self-purpose is kind of a vital part of the equation.
Okay, again, I'm going to pull you back to what I was trying to get at with a little bit more, and I know it's in some ways an impossible question, but what are the issues that you're trying to get people to face up to?
Yeah, I realize there's a practical and tangible thing that you're looking for in your question there, me rabbiting on about self-actualization or whatever it is. Okay, so I mean, you did say it can't all just be about patient centricity and AI. It's true. But if you think about AI, where is the role of the human? So it's very easy to spend the next 73 years talking about the technology. You could do so just without even leaving LinkedIn these days. And what you obviously need to do is to understand that AI is not going to be a solve-all. The person who invented the car also invented the traffic jam. The person who invented social media also invented fake news and maybe even teen depression. There's always going to be a backlash and an alternative and a bigger picture way of thinking. And also, technology has always been a net job creator. We think of these things often as a fearful thing that we should be afraid of. We're going to lose our jobs, we're going to lose our autonomy. People thought this when the internet came in 25 years ago, you might recall. So it's a matter of choosing where is the place that you're going to play. So I think that is a massive part of what we got to look at. And I do also think that there is a huge amount that technology and the interest of just humanity is bringing from other places. You know, what are the biohacking movement doing? What's the anti-aging movement doing? These things are starting to overlap and buffer onto what we're doing in pharma. And we kind of just stick our head in the sand again with a lot of these movements. We consider them to be fringe. But, you know, things like psychedelics, cannabis, and, you know, these things are starting to become treated seriously, and all of the others will do too. It's a spectrum. I think we need to be talking about preventative business models and all of these kind of things in the same breath as what we're going to be doing with our next drug, which, of course, already has a timeline of 10 to 20 years ahead. And we need to be thinking on the sort of social and ethical and other technology timelines to that degree as well.
There isn't time to get into all of that, but again, I find that an interesting area. And Noreen, I mean, that's a bit of a soapbox for you, isn't it? The sort of the bioethics side of it, and I think you said right to begin with when we had at the beginning of this conversation, you said something like pharma was a sort of like something you didn't want to get involved in, and then you did get involved in it. But early on in your sort of academic career, certainly you were being sort of, I think you were getting the message that pharma was not a great place to be because of the ethics of the business. Just talk a little bit about that if you can, because I find that intriguing. And well, no, just tell me a little bit about it. We haven't got time to go into all this in a lot of detail. Just tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, look, when growing up in America in particular, it was very much, you get advertised to by pharma companies day in and day out. I know, every pharma company's name, not because I see the great CSR initiatives or the DEI initiatives they're working on, but simply because they are promoting their products to me and it's in my face. So, when I started to kind of dig into this idea, it was surely you're working in a business or in a space where, Paul and I talk about this a lot. It's very easy to find purpose in healthcare because you are doing good for yourself, for others, for society. It's not, I'm not kind of working, in finance, which can be a bit more difficult sometimes to think about how am I actually helping the world and impacting. And so kind of that dichotomy between I'm working and thinking in an industry that is by definition supposed to be ethical. It's care for the person, it's trying to help humanity, and then you've got this part of the ecosystem that's not feeding into that. So there must be something there. And really, when I started to look deeper into the sociocultural aspect of it, it became, well, what's the driver of that? And one of the reasons why I ended up turning the tide, as I would say, in towards pharma was, quite frankly, my first boss ever was the person that made me realize, yes, Noreen, you work in a seemingly quote unquote unethical industry, but the people in it, the people on a day-to-day basis, are genuinely trying to do good and find good. And it kind of led me to believe that even if there is this kind of reputation of, pharma not doing the best that it could, and it's very true in certain spaces, we have an ethical obligation to try to do the best that we can do as individuals in impacting that wider focus. So a lot of my kind of interest lies in the ethics of AI. I think a job of the future that I was reading about was robot ethicists. They're going to be huge in the future. And if we don't get behind that, if we don't try to teach that ethic of responsibility, of caring for one another, of kind of the environment as well, because sustainability is not just sustainability of people, it's also sustainability of the climate, of the environment that impacts us on a day-to-day basis, then what are we doing? And I think that's kind of where I almost had to reframe my own thinking of what does ethic mean and how can I apply it on a day-to-day basis and stay true and authentic to who I am in working in a space that seemingly doesn't follow that ethic, but actually can.
Again, I think we've all had our moments when we've wrestled with this question and or had to talk to your mum about quite what you're doing and the industry you work in and so on. I do find just I guess we all should wrap up because I could go on all day. I know that, so I'll try not to. But I find it also interesting that all the things you talked about, the desire for change, and so on, at the end of the day, Paul, I guess it does come down to it's still more useful to put people together in a room physically, face to face. You end up with a meeting again, and you can try and do it differently in Australia, but bring them together is really important, because I know you do lots of webinars and stuff, but let's put in a little bit of plug. All the recordings are on Network Pharma TV and they're great, but you still need people in a room together to maybe really get the creative juices going to really affect change. Is that I guess that's a simple truism.
I'm an introvert, Peter. I hate people. Yet even I think that
Yeah, yeah.
we benefit from being in and you know, for a while back in 2021, we didn't know. We didn't know if the events world would come back and it would be useful. I believe now there are more events than there were before. I believe now that some of the attendances of some of the big medical congresses, and you will know this from your medcoms world, Peter, is even greater now than it was before. Uh, I still think there is a lot of work to do on how to actually maximize the experience and the time. And I lament on a daily basis the lemming-like behavior that we often expose, and just the incredible you know, need for us to do much more with the efforts that we all make to get to those gathering points, and
Yeah.
how we could really, you know, maximize that potential.
I'm completely in agreement, which sort of comes back to my point that we need to measure more to understand it, to think about this a little bit more. It is something that I feel quite strongly about. But look, we've run out of time, as we were inevitably going to do, with me still wanting to talk more. So look, thank you very much. I find it fascinating. Frankly, I think what you're doing at Pharmageddon is interesting. And good luck to you with all of it, the events, everything else that you're doing. I know that I can speak for you and say anyone watching this can contact you via LinkedIn. That's an easy way, and follow up any of this conversation or find out more about the events and so on. So I'm going to wrap things up just by asking people, if you're finding this sort of content interesting, come over to Network Pharma TV. There's hundreds, in fact, hundreds and hundreds of videos now, and hundreds of people. We've captured opinion and content and so on. So please come and have a look at what we're doing at Network Pharma TV. But for today, Noreen and Paul, I'm going to say thank you very much. Give a little wave. Bye bye.